Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so as promised, I want to kind of go over some of the stuff that we found in Frankenstein as we read last week. You know that Frankenstein is divided into 3 volumes. And so I want to kind of hit the first volume and then go to the second volume and then get to the third volume as well. And we're not going to talk about everything. We're just going to look at a few basic elements that can be found in here. And so I want you to look at Walton. Why is Walton there? And how does he draw your attention to the story? And how can we parallel Walton with Frankenstein? It's almost kind of compared to the creator. Both of them are self-educated. Walton is lonely for a friend. Walton gives credibility to Frankenstein's story of creature because he's already kind of seen the monster, and there has to be someone that he tells the story to. And so these are all key parts of this story. So hopefully you kind of kept that in mind. Okay, so we see early on that there's a description of the master of a boat. Why was he there? He kind of shows that true love is kind of selfless. He also kind of shows this lack of intellect that we see in some of the movements around the Romantic period. He shows that maybe when you're educated, you aren't as selfless and compassionate, and that kind of goes with the anti-intellectual movement that we were just kind of talking about. In the fourth letter, we have our first sighting of monster and Frankenstein. And so that's the first time we really kind of see what really is going to happen. When we look at Frankenstein himself, and a lot of times most people assume that Frankenstein is the name of the monster, but he's not. Frankenstein is the name of the person who created the monster. And so it's really important to kind of understand that. So when we refer to Frankenstein, and when we think of, you know, our visuals of Frankenstein with the green monster and the bolts coming out of his head, that's not Frankenstein. That is Frankenstein's creation. That is Frankenstein's monster. So that's important. But Frankenstein himself, he was a father, loving, ethical, kind. His mother was loving, and she passed away. Elizabeth, kind, noble, heroic. She was a very balanced character. Henry Clerval, he also of imagination. So when we look at Frankenstein and what influences him, we see thunderstorms and electricity. We see some very famous kind of philosophers and key people in religion, and etc. He wanted power and he wanted fame, and that's kind of what led to his destruction. He was looking for evidence the monster was evil, and in a flash of lighting, he realizes he is. He almost seems as though the monster is a sort of like an alter ego of Frankenstein himself. And so those are like key things really to look for as you read this book of letters. When we look at volume 2, it's important the way nature is a healer of the monster and for Frankenstein, and that's why they went on this trip. The solidarity of the trip shows the loneliness and the exile. The monster goes from the noble savage to the educated monster as he gains knowledge. And also as he gains knowledge, which this is going to go with that anti-intellectualism movement, also as he gains knowledge, he also appears to lose his innocence. Shelley actually saw Mont Blanc, and so everything that she's writing about in terms of Mont Blanc is true. So that's pretty interesting. But the monster starts out as Adam in that he knows nothing. He's truly innocent, and he's just living off of the land. He's living off of berries, etc. But the monster watches the family and desires the love and acceptance of others. So he performs tasks and such for the family. He sees himself in a pool and is utterly disgusted and horrified by his appearance. Because Felix's wife Sophie is from another place, they teach her and him, unknowingly to them, language and reading. So he's kind of in the background that whole time, and he's learning just as Sophie is. Later in the volume, you're going to see that you saw that he compares himself to Adam and Satan and finds himself more like Satan than Adam. So once the seed of revenge is planted, it eventually is going to start growing. And we see that very clearly in this book. And then in the third and final volume of the book, the monster comes out in the moonlight through a window after the female is destroyed. And the monster grins at Victor. And the monster calls him slave. And Frankenstein calls the monster devil. So then we have the drifts in the boat, falls asleep, wakes up in a storm, sick, and nature carries him to shore in Ireland. And again, nature is key in this romantic movement, and it's going to be very key in this story. At the end of chapter 4, we start to see that Frankenstein himself is the actual monster here, not the creation that he made. The monster through the window with the grin points to Frankenstein's dead wife, and he awakens to revenge, talks to the magistrate who believes Frankenstein until he's called to action. And so Frankenstein realizes what he's done, what he's created, and he immediately is like, oh, who can help me get out of this mess that I have made for myself? And nobody really believes him, and nobody's willing to do anything about it. So the chase begins in the family graveyard, where the monster joins Victor and in a sense tells him that Victor has become the monster. Victor asks Walton to finish his revenge for him, and then Walton makes Frankenstein to be the fallen angel. Power and pride, creative imagination, this is what the monster is. And then on his deathbed, Victor has this realization. And for the last time, monster extends his hand to Victor. And so it's important the way that the monster and Frankenstein really merge into one being, particularly in this third volume of the book. If you turn to love, you are degraded. And then the book is really key on the pride and desire for power. And so those are the themes and the elements that you really should have seen as you read. I think most of you did. But I told you that I would post this for those of you that were not in class today. So that was pretty important in what we read. You do have an exam this week. Please make sure that you go back and look at your quizzes over the past few weeks. I promise they're going to help you as long as you did them. You can use your quizzes on the exam. You can use your textbook on the exam. You can use any notes that you took on the exam. Basically anything except for somebody else's exam. So good luck. And next week we'll start the Victorian time period, which is another favorite of mine. So I'm really excited to share that with you. Y'all have a great rest of your week, and good luck on your exam. If you need anything, please do not hesitate to let me know. Thank you.